The following program contains graphic material, including offensive language. Viewer discretion is advised.
Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1929. Faith was always an important part of daily life, as both his father and grandfather were Baptist ministers. He thrived at a segregated high school, graduating at 15, before heading off to Morehouse College. He then dedicated 3 years to theological study at Crozier Seminary in Pennsylvania. While earning his graduate degree at Boston University, he met Coretta Scott, who he would marry and have 4 children with. King and his family settled in Montgomery, Alabama, when he became the 20th pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. When Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to relinquish her seat to a white man on a Montgomery City bus in 1955, the incident lit a fire under the burgeoning civil rights movement.
His boycott of the bus system in Montgomery, Alabama was tremendously successful because he was incredibly strategic and he worked with other people to get the individuals in Montgomery, Alabama to understand that they weren't going to take it anymore.
King's experience, passion for the cause, and position in the community gave him the credentials to become a leader in the 381-day boycott of the city buses. On December 20th, 1956, the Supreme Court ruled segregated buses to be unconstitutional. This was a major victory for the civil rights cause and proved King's nonviolent methods of protest could yield results. King was now the national face of the civil rights cause. He was jailed over 20 times, was once stabbed in the chest, his house was bombed, and he suffered relentless personal attacks on himself and his family. For a man of peaceful intentions, he unfortunately spent much of his life the target of violent intent, yet the threats never stopped him.
Dr. King inspired thousands of people through his eloquence and through his fearlessness, especially after his home was firebombed with his wife and his children. They showed through their courage that they were prepared to give their lives to the cause of freedom.
King worked tirelessly to promote the cause he so strongly believed in. And from 1957 through 1968, he traveled over 6 million miles, delivered 2,500 speeches, wrote 5 books, and dozens of articles. His hard work and ability to communicate earned him such respect that he earned the ear of President John F. Kennedy, who personally met with King. Of all the speeches King delivered, none has stood the test of time like his famous I Have a Dream speech. Symbolically delivered from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963, in front of 250,000 people, both black and white. King had become such a force in America that he was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1963. A nice achievement indeed, but it paled in comparison when in 1964 he became the youngest man ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Martin Luther King Jr. was an American. He was deeply American. And what's striking to me is that he had more confidence and faith in American democracy, in the Constitution, and in the principles of fairness and opportunity than nearly all of his critics.
While in Memphis to lead a protest march defending the rights of striking garbage workers in April of 1968, King delivered a rousing speech titled, "I've Been to the Mountaintop." It would be his last. Standing on the balcony of his second-floor room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, King was shot and killed. In 1983, Ronald Reagan signed a proclamation declaring the third Monday of every January Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a public holiday to celebrate the man and what he stood for.
Are you ready? Hello, everybody. This is nice to see everybody. Really a rotten day here today. It's a sleet and snow mix today, all day. Started yesterday evening, and it hadn't quit. So the roads are like, the best way to travel by vehicle is to put ice skates instead of wheels on your vehicles, because that's the only way you're going to get anywhere. So today is a good day. You know, we have Martin Luther King holiday today, and so it's a good opportunity for people to read a little bit history about the man and understand some things. And so that's kind of what I've been doing today. You know, I figured, well, you know, since I can't go out anywhere, I might just as well, make something out of the day, out of the holiday, do something. So I figured, well, I'm going to do a video, about Martin Luther King. That's what I'm going to be doing now. Of course, there's some more news here about President Biden's secret documents, more of them being found at his home. On that, Democrats, you need to do something about the lack of security around those archives, the documents, okay? Because the more that this happens, the less people are going to look at Trump as being the criminal that he is for having stole those documents, as opposed to Biden finding these things out of, everywhere and not even realizing that they were there, okay? This goes on too much, and people are really going to start to get twisted here on this. So you guys better do something about that and find out why there's so much of this shit laying around everywhere. And the archives, if you ran your archives like a high school library, you probably would have a lot better security of that, because then you'd know who checked things out and still has it, right? Jesus. Okay, so enough about that. Anyway, back to Martin Luther King. What a guy he was. What a inspiration he was to so many people in that time in our country. And it was as ugly as things seem to us today, I can't imagine witnessing people having a colored water fountain and white water fountain and everything segregated. It would seem wrong just on the surface, okay? But then I also think, well, if I grew up in those times, I would have been just like the frog that slowly boils itself to death. I would have gotten used to it, and it wouldn't have looked wrong, right? I mean, I think that's how it was, and why it was so difficult for people to understand that what they were doing was wrong. Because people don't like to be told, what you're doing is wrong, you're making a mistake. They don't like that. Arrogance kicks in. People's fur goes up, and before you know it, you got a fight in the street. Okay, nobody keeps an open mind about anything. Nobody wants to take the time to sit down and listen to the reason why you're being told that what you're doing is wrong. Okay, and then of course you got just the plain old racists who were brought up to be bigots and feel like what they're doing isn't wrong and it's justified. In their minds, it's like getting up every morning and having a bowl of cereal. They don't see anything wrong with that, but that's how they look at it. So am I saying that, we should just simply excuse them for being ignorant about it? Maybe. It depends. These people know in some way that what they were doing was wrong, the way they treated, black Americans. Because if they didn't, why would the Klan be wearing hoods? Why would they be anonymous in some way and to make it harder for people to identify? I mean, why would they do that if they weren't certain that what they was doing was wrong? So obviously, in some layer, they did know what was wrong. Maybe because when they went to killing people, that's when they knew they crossed the line. But in their eyes, it was necessary to make a point. Okay, maybe. I'm just grasping here at straws on that, wrong reasons why, but I'd have to say that, there isn't one particular reason why. There's probably a multitude of reasons why folks in the South back in Martin Luther's Luther King's time was the way they were, okay? And it's because probably it was just an area of the country that was so used to having blacks being looked down on that it just it scared the shit out of them when these people wanted to have the right to vote, you know, and stuff, and they want to be treated equally and just stop the segregation. All right. But certainly the vote issue was a big thing there, okay? Because when you give power to people, especially the power to vote, they can change the game board considerably. And that's what scared them all, okay? Because they knew what would happen if the black people had the right to vote. A lot of white people would be out, out on their ear. So even President Johnson at the time, who a lot of Democrats give a lot of, you know, how can I say it, a lot of respect for because of the things that he accomplished. I mean, even he was sort of, you know, not too enthused with the idea of blacks and their right to vote. Okay, he was focused on Vietnam and getting that thing up and going, okay? And he didn't understand that, look, he at the time he wanted to end poverty in this country, okay? And the only way you can accomplish that and make any success at it is if the poor have the right to vote. And who was largely poor in this country were black people. Now, if you want to end poverty, they got to be able to have a say in how that is done in their areas, right? So they got to have voting power to end poverty. You see, Johnson wasn't thinking about that. He figured the power of the government itself could end the poverty, but you can't do that if you cut yourself off from half the population of the country by not letting them vote. So, you know, Martin Luther King had a big job there to try to convince the president to reverse his thinking here on that. To say, look, you want the black people to sign up in the military and go fight in Vietnam, but you're not willing to let these people vote to decide their destiny. And if you don't let them do that, then how are they ever going to get out of poverty? Because the same people that, you know, are out there fighting, they're getting the right to vote are the same people that want to see them stay at the bottom of the ladder of economics, you know, basically poor all the time. They didn't want them to have anything, okay? And so that's the way had always been, okay? The black people had their place in society and the white people had theirs, and, you know, they just, for I don't know how long, you know, decades, since the end of slavery, I guess, that's the way it was in some parts of the South. And they didn't want that changed. And one little inch of that, you know, they didn't want that changed. Because, as they say, change is fearful to many people. They don't know what that'll bring. And that scares the hell out of them. They didn't have faith in the idea that if you give these people what they want, what they have the right to have, that would, you know, make them happy. You wouldn't see so much angst in your communities. People would probably get along better. You know, it would take a generation later for the next generation to live with the knowledge of knowing that, hey, they can vote and everything, and then becomes acceptable. I mean, like a lot of things. That's why we're having so much trouble now about, you know, LGBTQ. I mean, it's going to take a few generations of us living with those people in order to say it's okay. You know, it's not a big thing. Okay, they've done their thing and we've done ours, and, you know, and so over time, people will learn to blend it and accept it, and then we'll look back as, you know, why couldn't we do that before? I mean, I think a lot of us are that way right now about the blacks and the whites. Like, why couldn't we just get along? Why couldn't we just give them what they wanted? You know, then there wouldn't have been any fighting. There wouldn't have been any need for having all these people like Martin Luther King to just come out and start rallying the cause. And none of that would have had to happen if we'd have just said, fine, they want to vote, let them vote, okay? You know, they're Americans, right? They are citizens, so, you know, why deny them that? I mean, that's basically trying to steal something from them, okay? And nobody likes to have anybody steal anything from you, no matter what race you are, you know. So logically, if this guy's going to have the right to do this, then I want that right too. Same thing. So it was something, it was an easy idea for people to get in their head. It just wasn't so easy to sell it, and that's what gave Martin Luther King the advantage, because he could sell these ideas to people to make people say, wow, this is, he wasn't telling anybody that, what he was talking about was a difficult, impossible thing. No, he was telling them that it's only difficult because people are already of a mindset that they grew up with their whole life, and they're the ones that we're going to have to convince that it's not right anymore. Okay. We either do it now or we do it in another generation or whatever, but at some point the cycle has to stop, and it might as well be today. Why wait till tomorrow? Let's do it now. Let's get it going, and in future generations the problem should ebb away to the point where people will just learn to accept each other no matter what. Okay. And he didn't want to see any more people getting beat over the head and killed and whatever. I mean, who the hell would, right? So it was when that march in Selma happened, okay, and all the people at home are watching this on TV, and they watched the brutality of the state troopers and and the people down there that were beating them, trying to get them back across the bridge. That was probably the first time when blacks and whites together had the same emotion inside of injustice, and said, that ain't right. Okay, that's not right. Okay, no matter how they felt about, the black people in general, they knew that wasn't right. Nobody should be beating the hell out of them. They weren't doing anything wrong. They were just marching. A lot of marching the same way a lot of white people were doing at the time. Okay, but these people weren't allowed to, and they didn't see any reason for that. Okay, and that's why so many went down there. That whites and blacks together went down to Selma, and they marched. Okay. Together, and that made a profound statement, because at the time I don't think Americans really had noticed before that there was a slice of white America out there that wanted to see this racial thing kind of end too, because they were sick of seeing it on the nightly news. Okay, they're sick of hearing about it, and as time goes on, people start to wonder, why is this going on? When did it start? Why did it start? And people want to end it because it's not right. Just like we get mad when we hear about a criminal that, a guy that murdered somebody and he gets away with it. I mean, those kind of things always unite everybody in anger, and because they know. In their mind, they know the guy did it or the girl did it or whatever, and they don't feel like that was justice, and so people go out there and they start protesting and everything. That's what this was probably like then too. Was that these people, the black people, did nothing wrong, okay, and it was an injustice for them to be beaten like that. Some of them were even killed, for Christ's sake. I mean, and it was just ridiculous. And of course, it forced the government to take notice, which they didn't want to do, but but they did anyway. They had to. I mean, because the whole country had witnessed this on television, and so things were changing, but it was changing, very. Going through a rose bush field here of thorns. There was a lot of thorns as change was coming, okay? And King was really brave to always be out there in the front, knowing that he could be shot. I mean, he knew he had, friends like JFK and Malcolm X. I mean, people he knew getting shot because they had radical agendas, and radical at that time. Okay, which today we don't see as radical, but back in those days they were talking about things that were upsetting the boat of the way things were done in this country, and people didn't like it, and so these people were assassinated, and So he knew at the time that he was taking a risk. I'm sure he was scared. He was a young man. He was only in his 30s, and he didn't want to die young, But he knew that he lived by a philosophy that if you live your life, just to live, okay, then your life really doesn't have any meaning and stuff. But if you live a short life, and you accomplish something big, then your legacy will live on long after you're gone. I guess he decided to make that choice. What kind of a person do you want to be? You want to be somebody that makes a difference, or do you want to be somebody that just lives a long time? So, when going into the field, of religion and stuff that he did, obviously he felt the need to serve people, okay? And for a lot of us, we see that as a calling, to serve people for the betterment of humanity and stuff. And and that's what he really wanted to do, was serve people. He was that kind of a person, So I think it really bugged him growing up, I think, to see injustice around him all the time, and to see people suffering, and I guess he felt that he wanted to change all that. But I'm sure over time, as he grew up and matured more, and he saw how much the other side was pushing back, it had to get discouraging at times. It had to have. And I'm sure his wife probably remembered hearing him say things that were really discouraging, that he probably wanted to give up or something. But everybody has that time in their life where they just feel like they're not getting anywhere. They're just spinning their wheels in the fucking mud. So I mean, I think that's what it felt like. And so that's when when a leader has to get inspiration from the people that he leads. They got to remind him of why they're out there, and why they need him out there. And that's probably what kept him going, was that there was this what do they call this relationship, this take and need some kind of thing going on with him and his followers. He encouraged them, they encouraged him back to keep themselves going. Okay. And so, in every great movement, they have a voice that really can talk and really can energize people, and that's what he was. He knew how to do things, and he knew that he needed to take the risks for the people that he followed. They had to see that he was serious. And so the further he pushed, the more they pushed with him, and so, it's just, when you think about, how his time came to an end, it's obviously a sad and, disheartening thing to think, he was doing something good. I mean, he was inspired by Gandhi, from the very beginning. He found him fascinating. I find Gandhi fascinating, to be honest with you. I mean, I read a lot about him, and I think what it was that got me interested was the movie they made, Gandhi. And after that, I sort of been like interested in things, and I find it interesting that he began as a lawyer and he became that. I mean, that's probably like the only lawyer in history that ever dropped the shingle and tried to do something even loftier than that. That's quite a guy, I'll tell you. And for Martin Luther King, I think what attracted him was the idea that Gandhi accomplished a lot of what he wanted to do initially through peace. Basically just being like snowflakes on the ground. We're just going to sit here. We're going to look pretty and all that, and you guys, you can decide what you want to do. I mean, we're going to we'll stop the salt creation here or whatever. We'll stop, buying stuff from England and make our own clothes and all this stuff. He was doing things that weren't needing violent retribution. It was just simple acts, that were being done. And England didn't really know how to deal with that, because their whole history has been about conquering other lands, to take what they wanted. Okay. And India was one of their lands, and they didn't like the people doing what they were doing. It was upsetting the stability of their country, and so people got pissed, and they tried, I think of the slaughter they did there at the time, killing all those people. I can't remember the guy, the general, his name there in the English army, but he just basically lined up all those people, and they just his soldiers, and they just shot into the crowd and killed everybody there, and he acted like it was nothing. So I mean, that right there is a sign of bigotry right there, that the guy looked at them as less than human, and that just served Gandhi more, that they did that just to show more of why we're doing this. And because they can kill us, we're not going to do the same to them. We're just going to peacefully, express our sentiment about what they're doing, and we don't want them here anymore. At the time, World War II was going on. Okay, so so you had this kind of weird juxtaposition here of you got peaceful protests and you got war going on at the same time. So like Martin Luther King, I think that was what attracted me to Gandhi too, and I think he wanted to try to emulate that, try to copy that, and to see if it would work here in the United States. Why it didn't work as well, I don't know. Maybe because Americans are just different kinds of people. Maybe because all Americans weren't united behind this. Whereas in India, the country of India was behind pushing out the English, okay? But, everybody here was American, so there was no foreign country here oppressing us. It was just, Americans against Americans, okay? And that's probably why it didn't get the same result in the end as Gandhi had managed to achieve. But I guess, if it had been, if England had still been here and Martin Luther King had come around and peacefully protested them, maybe we would have accomplished much the same thing that they did in India. So let's go to commercial break. We'll be right back.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me!
This is me.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Ruth McLaughlin, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
The inmates are running the asylum. The far right, it's holding America hostage.
There is no obstacle this body can overcome.
And Lauren Boebert, with all due respect, the woman barely won her race.
Do you consider yourself a serious legislator? Well, absolutely.
The world will be gone.
Of course Joe Biden's the president.
Hey, remember when I skydived?
That never happened, Jimmy.
Neither did this.
You can see one of the earlier pictures where I'd actually stiff-armed him. And, I knew he'd lost his cool.
one more bad boy billionaire raised up.
Oh, they throw gays off buildings. So?
We don't do something immediately, our country is gone.
When Marjorie Taylor Greene raced down the aisle to take a selfie with Kevin McCarthy, which may have been his first act as Speaker.
So sometimes democracy's messy, but I would argue that's exactly how the founders intended it.
It's a religion that's almost a cult, really, and it's a religion of this wokeness.
Here I am, a perfect candidate to be, RIP, and it just didn't happen.
I will not be taught vows and loyalty, commitment from a whore.
Maybe I should nominate President Donald J. Trump tomorrow.
Is this a game show?
Rosendale.
Kevin!
Hearn.
Lindsey Graham had his back to the swimming pool, and he was only about 2 feet away from the swimming pool. I really knew that if I pushed him in the pool, which could happen like that, all I had to do was rush him and shove him. And I immediately regretted not doing it.
The Honorable Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received one.
That was easy, huh?
Donald Trump is back, angry, vengeful, ready to take back the White House and wreck America again. And who's going to stop it? These weaklings and losers, business leaders, they'll bend the knee and write the checks. The press? Too many are just here for the show, ready to both sides America to death. The law? He'll ignore it, like he's always done. No. The only people who will stop Trump are Americans ready to put country over party, ready to put differences aside to save this country, ready to work, ready to fight, ready to stand up when he knocks America down. Because it's not about left and right. It's not about rich and poor, black or white. Like it's always been, the choice is simple. It's America or Trump.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. So, talking about Martin Luther King. We had some leaders here, like in India too, mind you. There were people like Gandhi in India who wanted to take the more militant approach, and Gandhi had to reel those people in. Here, Martin Luther King had people like Malcolm X out there who was more militant in their thinking to try and revolt in a, I'm not going to say in a more violent way, but I'm going to say in a more aggressive way, okay? Which, it didn't agree so much with Martin Luther King, and at times the two of them were at odds with each other, even though they had the same goal. They had different ways of thought, different schools of thought about that, at least initially. As Malcolm X was starting to change after he made a visit to, was it Egypt, I guess he went to? Yeah, Egypt. And he spent time over there, and I guess he got a new understanding of being a Muslim, and that his idea of being a Muslim wasn't quite right, okay, from who he learned it from. While he was in prison. So he learned more about what a Muslim is while he was over there, and so he came back with a whole new attitude about things, and he started to be a little more inclusive of white people with his cause, okay, because he obviously didn't trust the white people to begin with, okay. He grew up where the white people were just always flicking cigarettes at him or whatever, you know what I'm saying? He just didn't trust him. And I guess I wouldn't trust people either if they were just looking down their nose at me. That's how bigotry starts. So, he started to be a little more open-minded about things. And when he did that, the people that he was in that group with, I can't remember the name of it, but they just said, you're out of here. We don't want you here anymore, because you're not thinking like the way you were before. So he had to make a little subsect of his kind of civil rights movement, and that's when shit started to hit the fan. They were turning on him, and so that's kind of led up to his being assassinated at the end. But Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, so they had the same goal, they just had different schools of thought on how to get there. So that kind of put them at odds with each other. And like I said, the same thing happened in India with Gandhi and some other leaders over there that were trying to get England out of the game, as it were, in their country. At the same time, these people had another objective, which Gandhi didn't really know about. Okay, so that leads into an whole another chapter of what happened over there. But the thing is that, Martin Luther King really felt that his path of what he was trying to do was the right one, okay? And he knew you couldn't go up against a monster like the federal government with arms and win that fight, okay? It just wasn't going to happen. The government's firepower was superior, as it is today, and the only way you can get any kind of a change in thought in government is protesting and doing it in such a way that doesn't create the anger that it often encompasses when people do stuff, like when you have people rioting in the streets and putting bricks through windows and shit. All that does is create more anger on the other side, and then they come down harder on you because of it, okay? If you don't do that, and you just make your statement by just being the the tree that landed across the road and being unyielding, okay, then they have to deal with you with, like, what do you want then? Okay, what do you need so you can get the hell out of the way and we can do things, okay? And that's what they call about laying down a brick in the road. You do these things one step at a time, okay, until you got a road that's quite a long road, and you can turn around and look back and you say, look how far we've come. And so this was how he was doing it. He knew that he wasn't going to live to see the end of this road constructed, okay? But it was important for him that he got them started. He had to teach them as this was going on how to do this, okay? Because these people really didn't know. The black people really didn't know how to deal with injustice that was happening to them. They were just afraid of the powers that be, that if they tried anything, they would, So King had to show them a way that they could do this, where in mass they can find the courage within each other to do this and do it the right way, where even he didn't have to be needed anymore. He got them started and they can continue on, which eventually that's what happened. I mean, after he was assassinated, other people came up, other civil rights leaders, like Jesse Jackson, all them, they came up and they picked up where King left off, okay? And that's basically why, King felt that, he wasn't going to see the end of this, because he knew the road was going to be long and it was going to take a lot of generations to beat this back. And he was right, okay? Who better to know that than somebody who grew up in the area of this country that was so decimated by bigotry and pessimism and stuff. I mean, it was just, unbelievable, okay? And I'm not going to, I know I keep saying the South, but I mean, this is where he was at the time. But, there was that all across the country, even in the North, okay? Just, it seemed like the South was always the one getting the headlines of when these things would come down the pike, okay? Because the South is where the slavery was, for the most part. And so down there, it was harder for them to accept, the change that was trying to be shoved down their throats, and as the way they saw it, they didn't want to do it. I mean, they were saying, well, there's the government and then there's Mississippi, okay? We don't follow, you know what I'm saying? They're trying to turn themselves into a nation state, okay? So they can do things their way. That's what they wanted. They just wanted the government to stay the hell out of their state, and they wanted to do things their way. But that wasn't going to happen, and that pissed them off. So, like what I said, I'm not saying that it was just, the bigotry was just indicative of the South, although it really was sort of emphasized there more than anywhere. But it was everywhere else too. And, as it, began all the way back to the days when we were human trafficking, we were going to Africa, basically declared war on that country by stealing their people and bringing them over here in chains. Okay, I can't think of another way to begin a war than by stealing its inhabitants. I mean, what if another country came over here and started kidnapping folks right out of the damn streets of New York or Philadelphia or Boston, and put them in chains and then travel them all the way over to some other country and then putting them to work in the fields? We just sit back and let that happen? Of course not. It'd be a declaration of war. So, we started a war over there in Africa, but they couldn't defend themselves so much. They weren't combined in order to repel what was happening. They were just tribes over there, and being loosely connected, they couldn't overpower the ships that were going there to pick up, their inhabitants. So yeah, you want to talk about a forever war? How long were we doing that? Stealing people from there? Was it hundreds of years? So yeah, we had a forever war before we had the forever war in Afghanistan, and we still are in a way. We never declared peace, or we never gave any apology, I guess, as far as I know, we never really apologized to the countries over in Africa that we went there to, and took their people from. We never did that. So the door is still open to war, the way I see it, I'm surprised that, they haven't, said anything, but but like I said, it was just, in the South, it was always on the news, okay, especially when, those activists were shot in Mississippi and, and that whole mess, started down there. Our attention was always focused down there, so that's why people have, the perception that, the racism is there, that it's them, they're the ones that hate. No, it was everywhere. It's everywhere. Even up here. There's a Klan up here in Maine, for Christ's sake. I mean, believe it or not. They're not so noticeable, but they are up here. And I imagine in your state there's probably a few there too, It's everywhere. So the problem still exists. And even if we don't hear about it so much as maybe it was then, it's still there. And it seems like, though, these days we're hearing a lot more about it only because of the dingbat we had for president for 4 years, who basically made it seem okay to, insult people that don't look like us, or white people, and he really brought the worst out of this country, because it, like I said, the rats come out, when he showed up into the office, and they all started in, figuring he's the one that's going to protect us so we can go out and do the hell we want. That's why they did January the 6th, okay? They wouldn't have done that for any other guy who was a former president, okay? But for Trump, yeah, they'd have bent over backwards for him, okay? They saw him as one of their own, okay? Whether they thought anything different about him or not, okay, he was the guy that they were going to rally behind. Now, these people are very, these bigots are really eager to come out of the closet. They don't do it on a whim if they don't have their ducks in a row, let's say, if they're not sure that they are going to get away with it. But if they feel like the tide is turning where they could, then you start to see them come out. And they're not so, how can I say it, politically correct, when they talk about things. It comes out in their words, and you know who they are, okay? Because when they're not out in the public eye, when they talk with each other, it's just, you wouldn't believe what you hear. So when they finally come out and they start talking, then you find out, well, that guy's definitely a racist. He's definitely, what I'm saying? So it's, what I'm saying? That's how you know. And when it came to the January 6th thing, I mean, Trump knew what he had behind him. And they felt like, yeah, well, he'll be there. He said he was going to protect us, and that's what happened. So the problem still exists, even after all this time. Since Martin Luther King, we still have that problem. And so he would definitely encourage us to keep doing the fight, okay, in the peaceful way. Keep doing the fight, okay? Don't give up. Don't get discouraged, okay? There's going to be a slump, and then there's going to be a good time, then there's a slump. Everything comes in waves, okay? Change doesn't come all at once. It doesn't happen overnight like you see in the movies or in TV, okay? It comes slowly, because you're not dealing with one person or 100 or 1,000. I mean, you're dealing with millions of people who are all of the same thought about what they're doing. And so you got to give allowances to let people saturate themselves on a thought, okay? You got to let them marinate on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. Let them think about it. Let them think about it. Let them decide for themselves as you keep pushing forward how important clinging to bigotry is for them. Because eventually, they'll get desperate, and they'll have that moment where they make things look bad for everybody, and they'll try to discourage you from continuing. That's just smokescreen, okay? No matter how much bloodshed they spill, okay, that's still just a smokescreen, because they can't stop the momentum. They can't. No matter what they do, they can't stop it. They might discourage you in a small area, but the rest of the country is still moving against them, okay? So that little victory there is just a battle in a much larger war, okay? And so you don't give up there. You don't get discouraged, or you say, well, we'll regroup, come back out again. We'll keep coming back in waves, okay? And eventually, it's like a tsunami. You're going to beat down the barriers that are ahead of you, okay, in waves. And that's what you do. But, you do it peacefully, like Martin Luther King said. That's what you do. You keep coming back in mass all the time, showing them the intent, the will behind what they're talking about, the intensity of what they want, that they mean business, that they want what they want, and you're going to give it to them, or problems are just, this march is going to get bigger and bigger, you can't stop that. No matter how many cops you got out there, how many roadblocks you set up, okay, you're not going to stop it. Okay, you're either going to, deal with this problem so you can get back to doing your job, or you're just going to devolve yourself and the country, and you're going to bring more people behind them as you keep screwing things up, like what happened in Selma. Then they get all the white people behind them. You're creating a spectacle of yourself where people are going to hate you more than you think. Okay, and if they don't take, if your town or whatever doesn't remove you out of the way, you're just going to lose whatever status you have in the face of, a undeniable fact that's coming into this country, which is, equality. All right. I mean, you brought them here, and now they want to stay here. They want to be Americans, and so now they get to have all the rights that you've been denying them. Okay. No matter how you thought of them before, they ain't that anymore. They're people now. They're citizens now. They deserve respect. They deserve all the same things you have: education, a job, okay, college, everything. They deserve everything that you got, because now they're no longer slaves. They're no longer refugees, or whatever you want to call them, or animals, or whatever you want to think. These people are intelligent. Martin Luther King graduated early for his age because he was so damn smart. The guy was a friggin' genius, okay? How does that fit in their friggin' playbook about, these people are just animals? Well, it doesn't, because now they proved to you already a long time back that they can learn our language, okay? They can learn how to run a business. They have, an ambition. They want to be equal to us. Do animals do that? I got a cat here behind me. She doesn't come up to me and say, "Jeff, can I have the right to vote? Can I go to school?" I mean, as funny as that might seem, that's setting a point. They're not animals. Any more than white people are animals, okay? We may have basic needs and stuff like that, but we're all in the same boat. All of us, okay? When we sit here and we try to lord over a whole bunch of people, that just... It's sickening when you think of that. It is for me anyway. When I think of one group of people deciding that, oh, you guys aren't equal to us, so we're going to just treat you as such. Anytime that's ever happened in history, it always ends up in a bad way. Okay, as far back as you can go. The Jewish people can tell you that. In their own history, they've always been persecuted. They've always been treated like slaves. Okay, and it's never worked out for the people that enslaved them. Okay, all it's done is angered the Jews enough to do something about it, and it created problems. So, from history, we should have learned that if you try to, conscript people that you think are beneath you to do all the dirty work, to be slaves, and treat them like they're cattle. It's going to backfire on you, because these people are not just animals. They're not what you think they are. They're human beings. They have a brain. They got needs. They have ideas. Okay, they have an intelligence you're not even aware of. Okay, they may not speak your language, but that doesn't mean they're not smart. It means they don't understand your language. saying, "Oh, they can't speak English, so they're stupid." That's ridiculous. Okay, okay, that's ridiculous. That's not even a reason to hate somebody. Okay, let them learn your language, and then you'll see just how friggin' intelligent they are. Okay, some of us can only speak one language, so we would be considered dumb going into other countries that can only speak one language. You know, because all right. But like I said, that's you know, that's the thing that Martin Luther King was trying to impress on us, is that you know, the fight can't end. And for all of us who believe in what he was doing, it's not just a black cause anymore. It's an American cause, and that means all of us. All of us that agree with Martin Luther King, all of us have to do this thing that he wanted us to do back then. What he wanted us to see happen in this country is the unification of the country behind a common goal, and that's what would bring an end to this thing. And I think a lot of white people today have kind of, I'm not going to say forgotten that, but I guess they feel like they don't want to get involved so much anymore with that because they see the brutality of it. But I think we need to get white people back involved with the cause too, because it's just as much an American cause, which means it's as much our cause as it is theirs, because whatever rights they don't have can be taken away from us, you know, just as easily. And we don't want that. We want to be able to start off with everybody on the same level, okay, and becoming equal that way. If you can't start your country off like that, then you're going to have problems all the way down the line. And so we have to learn that we haven't fixed this problem yet because we keep perpetuating it. All right, we allow our kids to learn the wrong things. So white people have to work on this too, about, you know, not exposing the youth of the country to these bigoted things, this lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, you know, the way that are the language and stuff. We don't want to teach them that anymore. Even if, you know, they learn from our behaviors. If they see us acting that way around black people or something, then they imitate it. So we have to be careful of that. All right. And the more we lessen it, the more we succeed, and the easier the problem becomes to squash. Okay. And so the white people, it's just as much our battle within ourselves, you know, to stop perpetuating the racism. It has to stop. Okay, it's one thing for the black people to go out there and demand their rights, but if they're always fighting the white people to get their rights, and the white people aren't seeing the point and not fighting their own problems that they're doing, perpetuating this bigotry, then, you know, the fight never ends. It's going to go on and on and on, and I don't think anybody wants that. And I really think that, you know, it's a fight, and for us that have understood King and believe in what he was trying to do, and would like to see that day where we're unified and we don't have these fights anymore, we should be standing with them as they want their rights. We should give them their rights. We should help them have their rights, because it's much harder to stop, you know, a protest when it's not just black people. It's much harder because then you got white people in there, and it makes it so much harder for the bigots to identify who's the the one they want to go after. I mean, it's just, you know what I'm saying? So it's just, I think it's a better way, because then it looks more American. You know, it looks like more of an American way, and it's an American problem. It's not just a black or white thing. It's an American problem. And, you know, when you got Muslims and Jews and the white people and all the different aspects all together, I mean, Jesus, I mean, that's the blending part. That's what we wanted right from the very beginning. When we came here, we wanted the melting pot of all the people in this country, that we can get along here and not the way they are in other countries. We can prove that still. The ball is still in our court, no matter how bad things get. Okay, we can still rise above it. Okay, we can still do, you know, what we set out to do in this country. All we got to do is just change things in ourselves. You know, admit that we're doing the wrong thing, that admit it, okay? And then admit that we can change, okay? People fight the need to drink. They fight the need to smoke, or whatever vice they have. Is this any different? You know, to fight the need to be a bigot. I mean, is that so hard? Is that so difficult to do? I can't believe that. I can't believe that it's that difficult, okay? I think people, if they have a knowledge of what they're doing, okay, they can choose to not do it, all right? If they can control themselves enough not to get up every morning and take a gun and start shooting people all over the neighborhood, then they also have the conscience enough to know not to get up and start tracking down black people and throwing rocks and stuff at them and calling them names. Okay, they've got to. People have got to have more self-control. They've got to. You know, it's not impossible. It's not, you know, well, we can't help it. That's just who we are. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I think people can do which a lot of us think is impossible. Okay, because we consciously do these things, and we can consciously stop it. And you know, I think someday that, you know, people might wake up and say, you know what, I don't need to do this anymore. It's too much stress. I don't like it. It makes my day all miserable, and I can't eat, I can't sleep, because I'm constantly thinking about ways to ruin somebody's life. You know, enough. Okay, you're not going to win. There's always going to be opposition against you, so you're going to live and die fighting this ridiculous fight to be an asshole. So enough of it. Civil rights isn't as pleasant as the way Martin Luther King was, because I get more to the bones of things, but I would prefer to be able to speak the way he did about it, because it seemed to get more attention. But I don't know, I'm just a different kind of person, you know. I don't have that language. I don't have that minister type language to be able to use poetic way of doing things. So I just come right out, bring down the axe, as it were. Okay, so that's it for today, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day here for this holiday, and a great work week coming up. And I will talk to you later, so please keep your ears open to local COVID-19 news out there, and subscribe and comment. And please, on this day, try to treat each other nice, and if you can't, then don't say anything, stay home, get out of society's way, and let some healing happen as we reflect on the things that Martin Luther King tried to educate us with. So take care, everybody.